Ganesha Sharada Gurubhyo Namaha Agajanana Padmarkam Gajananam Aharnisham Anekadam Tam Bhaktanam Ekadantam Upasmahe. Welcome back for this sixth chapter of Ganesha Purana. In the last chapter, you have seen the king and the queen along with their two ministers who left for the forest. Finally, in near a pond, they met Chyavana. Chyavana was son of Brighu. Let me just quickly bring out some story about Chyavana. Chyavana, in fact, you might have heard about a Ayurvedic potion which was available across the world called as Chavan Prash. The story behind that is Chyavana in his old age. This was when he was very young, when he was living along with his father. But in the later stage, when he was very old, he was once doing the penance, and his whole body was covered with anthill. Nobody could able to see a human being sitting inside that anthill. There were two holes in that anthill through which a beautiful light was coming out. That was actually the light of his eyes which were coming out. But knowing nothing about this, there was a king's daughter, the princess called Sukanya, who came to the forest along with her friends. She saw an anthill in which there were two lights, 2 points from where the light was coming. Knowing nothing about what exactly was there, she just took a small stick and just that source of light. But they were his eyes. And because of that reason, Maharshi Chavana in his old age had become blind. Realizing her mistake, she apologized to the Maharshi and requested her father to get him married to him. Her father was not really ready getting his young daughter married to that old man. But then Sukanya, realizing her mistake, she married that old man, and old man Chavana, and she was taking care of him. And at some time in their life, they met Ashwini Kumara, who are the twins. Ashwini Devatas were the twins who were known for their medicinal knowledge. She met them and they were enchanted by her beauty and they were wondering why she is living with this old man. But then she was also a pativrata, a woman who was obedient to her husband, and she requested them, and they were ready to give her any kind of a boon. And then she requested whether you can bring back the young age of my husband, make him a young man. And then they applied their Ayurvedic potion, their Ayurvedic treatment, which made King that Maharshi Chavana once again a young person. And the crux of this story is if you eat Chavanprash, you will live younger in your life. I'm sorry, I'm not making any advertisement related to a particular brand of Chavanprash, but this is the story because of which that Ayurvedic potion was called as Chavanprash. Okay, it's the same Chavan whom Sudharma had met on the way. And Chavan, being the son of Brighu, he returns back to his father's hermitage. Let's see how exactly Sut Goswami will going to explain, Sut Muni will going to explain this story. After Brigu's son Chavana heard the plea of Sudharma, he quickly picked up his water pot filled from the clear lake. Distressed, he silently returned home in great sorrow. Brighu then asked his son what has caused his delay, why he is delayed so much. Brighu asked, Son, you look like you are trembling. Have you seen something out of the ordinary? Why are you so late? Tell me everything from the beginning. Then Chavana explains to his father, Dear father, in the region of Saurashtra, in a city known as Devata, there was a lotus eyed king called Somakantha. He ruled a vast kingdom, protecting his subjects by dharma. Yet, because of fate, misfortune befell on him. Having bestowed the kingdom upon his son, he has come here to a nearby forest, tormented by extreme sorrow with his wife Sudharma and two ministers, Subala and Nanagamya. He is oozing with leprosy, covered with worms. He wanders about, traveling with great difficulty. He has become like Indra. Remember Indra, who was cursed by sage Gautama to have 1,000 vaginas. This was another story where Indra, the king of demigods, he once was wondered by the beauty of Gautama, who was another Maharshi, Gautama's wife Ahalya. Ahalya was a splendid, she was having a wonderful beauty because she herself was the daughter of Brahma, and Brahma gave her to Gautama. And Gautama was a little old at that time, and Ahalya was so beautiful. Seeing enchanted with her beauty, he the shape of he could be a shapeshifter. So Indra took the shape of Gautama and he cheated on her. And after having a sexual intercourse with Ahalya, Ahalya realized that it was not her husband Gautama, but instead he was somebody else. Seeing her anger, Indra showed himself that he is basically Indra, and there is nothing wrong in a king of demigod having mating with an ordinary woman like Ahalya. But then Ahalya was distressed. By that time, Gautama, her husband, comes and he realized what exactly happened there. And he cursed Indra because of his lust. His wife was spoiled. Gautama's wife was spoiled. So he gave a curse to Indra, saying that you will going to have 1,000 vaginas all over your body. And you know how his fate would be. But of course, then the story continues. Ahalya remains there. The story says that Ahalya remained there as a stone. She was also cursed to become a stone. But in fact, the reality of the story could be different. Anyone who was distressed so much, having been cheated, having been raped by somebody else, and having been abandoned by her husband, Ahalya would have led a life like a stone, sitting in her hermitage, not mixing with anybody else, sitting alone there. And then one day it comes in the Ramayana, Rama, accompanied by Vishwamitra, he came to the same Ahalya's hermitage and he sees Ahalya. And he was such a Rama was such an ideal person. He was such a great person. And the story in the Ramayana goes that by the touch of the feet of Rama, Ahalya again turned back into a human being from being a stone. But the real crux of the story is Ahalya would have been living the life like a stone, not mixing with anybody, living a lonely life as a loner, not mixing with anybody. And then when Rama comes and convinced her, these kind of a things do happen in a woman's life. She got raped not because of any of her mistakes. She was forced into that intercourse by Indra, and it was a Indra's mistake. And Indra should be cursed, and Indra should be punished, not Ahalya. Probably saying so when the Rama himself, who happened to be by that time, he was the prince of Ayodhya. Ayodhya was a huge kingdom at that time. And if the prince of Ayodhya comes and says there is nothing wrong with Ahalya, Ahalya was a right woman, and because by that time even Gautama was also having a sort of he was also feeling bad for whatever he has done, and he should not have abandoned his wife. So Gautama comes back, and finally Rama ensures that Ahalya goes with Gautama. And you know the speciality here, it is not just happened, these kind of a things not just happened with Ahalya, it happened with so many women. Sita was uh, sita was abducted. She was kidnapped by Ravana, and she was living under the captivity of Ravana for 1 year. What the society would think about her. And that happened even with Tara, who was Brahaspati's wife. Brahaspati was the master who was preaching to the demigods. And she was kidnapped by the disciple of Brahaspati, Chandra. And she even got mated with him, and she even became pregnant. And it was all against her wishes. And these kind of a things happened with so many women in the history. Probably we may today call them as mythology, but whether it is historical, there may not be any evidence. But still, in India, we consider these along with Kunti. who had children from different demigods, Yamadharmaraya and others. Draupadi, who had a polyandrous marriage, she lived with 5 husbands. We consider all these women, Sita, Kunti, Ahalya, even Mandodari, who was the wife of Ravana for certain reasons, Tara, Draupadi, and these are the women whom we need to remember in the early morning. It's called as Panchakanya Smare Nityam. We remember them in the morning. We call them as Kanya, means a virgin woman. How come we can consider them as virgin? Virginity is a boon given to them. In spite of all the atrocious things that happen to them, they are serve as ideal to all our women. The whole womenhood should consider them as ideal, and all people, men, all men should respect these 5 women, that it was all against their will, against their wishes. It is a man's masculinity. Because of that reason, atrocious things happened on them, and we need to respect them. And with that, the society should respect the women who had been forced into such sexual activities or any such kind of an activities much against their will. Ahalya is one among them. And here, incidentally, their story comes into the middle of our story. Let's continue with our story. Some time passed while I was asking the king's wife about what had happened to them. I asked her questions such as, how did this delicate queen arrive at this place? It's a dense forest. And how did her husband contract leprosy? Hearing their sorrowful story, my heart filled with pity. After I filled my pot with water, I just quickly returned back to a hermitage. Suta then continues. Chyavana reported everything whatever Sudharma has told him. And after the sage Brighu heard it, he again spoke to his son. Brighu said, Son, you have my permission to go back. Quickly bring all of them here. I may come to some use for them. I want to meet these uncommon people and would like to introduce myself to them, because they are not the people who are supposed to be living in the forest. They are the king and the queen who are supposed to live in a palace. Because the distress has fallen on them, they have come to the forest. And forest is a dwelling place for the sages. And it is our duty, whoever has come here, we need to help them. Continuing the story, Suta says, thus insisted by his father, Chyavana, full of compassion, went from pond to pond, anxious to find Sudharma. At that very moment, the 2 ministers, Subala and Gnanagamya, laden with fruits and tubers, came before the king. Chyavana then spoke to the delicate eyed Sudharma. My father invites all of you to his hermitage. Distressed with grief, Sudharma became depressed and her body looked as though lifeless. After the virtuous queen had heard these wonderful words from Chyavana, she left for the hermitage, accompanied by her husband and the 2 ministers. With her husband Somakantha, she walked in front of Chyavana like Shiva and Durga, accompanied by Ganesha and Skanda. She looked splendid in the middle of the path as she walked in front of the boy sage. They reached the area of Brighu's hermitage, which was filled with the sounds of mantras and strewn with various kinds of flowers and creepers. This place resounded with the cries of many animals which played there. The wind blew gently and the air was not too warm. There was only light rain, and the clouds poured down only at the sage's wishes. Walking before the sage's sun, they happily entered the hermitage. Sudharma then saw the wondrous Brighu there, clad in deer and tiger skin. He was the image of the sun, accompanied by his wife and 2 ministers. The king offered obeisance and with his hollowed hands joined together, he spoke. And here, often, sometimes, when it comes to forest dwellers, we do come across with things like they were clawed with deer and tiger skin. These days, they are endangered. They are not to be followed. And these were when the story was written, it was written hundreds of years back, 1,000 years back, when forest dwellers used to wear the skin of the deer and the tiger. When deer and tiger were enough, they were available in large quantity in the forest. Okay, let's continue. The king Somakantha explains, my fortune in coming here was certainly come to fruition because of my accumulated good works and austerity. Some good works or austerity that I did in the past. That's because of that reason I'm coming here to see you, the great Maharshi Brighu, who himself was son of Brahma, the creator. Since birth, I have been completely pure. Life has been good to my mother and father. None of us have made any mistakes. Just the sight of you instantaneously destroys all my bad karma and creates a good fortune in the future. Indra of sages, like Indra was king of demigods, you are king of sages. To be in your presence affords one a pure birth in the past, present, and future. So, seeing you is like having a rebirth for myself. O sage of perfect spiritual vision, in the region of Saurashtra, in a city known as Devata, I ruled a kingdom by utilizing prudent politics, honoring the demigods and Brahmins, and by adhering to goodness. What is this unforeseen? I don't know what exactly is this unforeseen bad karmic reaction that has presented itself as a most terrible and miserable state of being. I know of no possible remedy for this disease. Medications were tried, but nothing helped. I now seek the remedy of your compassion as the real medicine. We have come for refuge to your hermitage. Where there is a natural peace and accord. Suta said. Having heard this speech, Brighu became filled with compassion, and after looking at Somakantha, he spoke thoughtfully. Brighu said, O king, there is a solution. So don't worry. Those who stay in my hermitage experience no misery. Excellent king. I will explain to you about what happened in a previous life and about your misdeeds, due to which you have been forced into this condition. Firstly, you must all have a meal, as you have been gathering your own food for too long. You have traveled through many forests exhausted, and your faces have become extremely thin. But now you have come here. After Brighu had spoken, they all bathed, having first massaged himself with fine oils. After being duly prepared, well bathed, rested, and at the direction of Brighu, whose splendor is immeasurable, the royal party dined. They ate large quantities of food seasoned with 6 flavors: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, astringent. These are considered as the 6 different flavors. Having forgotten their extreme anxiety, they all slept well on soft beds offered by the sage, as though they are back in their own kingdom. Thus ends the 6th chapter of Upasana Khanda of the glorious Ganesha Purana, called Arrival at Brighu's Hermitage. So, after hearing the sorrowful story of King Somakantha from Chyavana, Brighu invited all of them to his hermitage. So, they all happily came to his hermitage, which was so wonderful, so peaceful. And they, Brighu, offered them to have a bath and have some good food, rest with sleep. And after they rested, as though they returned back to their kingdom, having all such kind of the glory of their kingdom, having all the facilities there, they rested well, and then they sat with Brighu to hear about what past karma in the previous life of King Somakantha, because of which he is now stuck with this leprosy. Let's now going to hear that in the next chapter. Namaste Sharada Devi Kashmir Puravasini Twamaham Prarthaye Nityam Vidya Danancha Dehimi. Goodbye.